Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. It's Tuesday morning, and we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. And Laith commented, hey, I didn't know this was dress up day, but I'm actually going to do an interview with Wyon News. They want to talk about the election after this. So that's why I'm dressed like I'm going to preach somewhere, like I'm going to preach somewhere today. But at any rate, okay, let's move forward. A lot going on. And before we get going, remember Laith's website. It's freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video. Make sure you go there. You can find all of Laith's good work there. A couple of things of critical importance when you go there. Number one, follow the freepalestine.video on social media. They have the links to their social media. Number two, make sure if you can afford it, that you donate. They're doing a lot of good work. And of course, the usual suspects are trying to stop them. So donate. And in addition, whether you can or can't donate, do what you can do as best you can. But make sure that you share freepalestine.video. Share the website on all your social media accounts. And when you share it with the post, put there, something in there that recommends that people donate and let them know how important it is. Laith Marouf, lots going on. Let's get started. One of the things that I've been saying for a while, not to blow my horn, it just is what it is. To me, it seemed obvious. Israel we're going to attack Iran. We're going to blow them to smithereens. We're going to, as if they could do anything they wanted and Iran couldn't stop them, And so they're doing all of this stuff. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at Iran's technological capabilities. I'm looking at Russia. They're in the mix. Apparently, they added some defensive capabilities. And my position was the worst possible thing that could happen to Israel is that they could attack Iran, and it could be stopped, easily stopped. Because at this point, the dynamic is Iran can attack you anytime they want. And you can't attack them anytime you want. Total domination. I'll add this because I think this is important. Last thing about it, I was listening to, one of these experts. I think it might have been Larry Johnson. And what he said was, because at first I thought, it was just a fake attack by Israel. Larry Johnson said, no, they went with the intent of a massive attack. And what they tried to do is fire missiles in, and we all know the game, knock out the air defense system, suppress the air defense system, then you can fly the planes in and attack at will. But they didn't have any luck. They tried to knock out the air defense system. All of those missiles were either shot down, thwarted through electronic warfare, whatever the case may be, and they couldn't attack because their planes would have got shot down and they had to turn back. Worst possible scenario for Israel. And a game changer, really, for the technology of the U.S. empire. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, you're right there. What we now are hearing more details about is that there was a multi-wave attack. A couple of hundred jets were involved in it. The Americans sent their air fueling jets to support those Israeli and other NATO jets that are painted with an Israeli flag on them to attack, Iran. And the target was Tehran region, the main target. And they needed, as you said, to take out all the air defenses on the border of Iran to reach the heartland with the second or third wave of attacks. And looking just at the videos that were released from the ground in Iran, you can see that the Iranians were using a different air defense system, something that is not seen before, and that the West doesn't have this kind and style of air defense systems. And actually, all military experts are now trying to figure out what is this air defense system, and it is not Russian. It is homegrown Iranian systems. And part of what we see in those videos is that the air defense missiles, when they get reached to close to a attacking missile or jet, they would explode in the air, even without contact. So traditional air defense systems would, go through head-on, kind of chasing the other missile and hitting it and exploding. These are just throwing shrapnel basically around the coming projectiles and taking them out that way. So it's much easier in this way to take out incoming projectiles. We also understood from some of the analysis that's coming out right now that Iran's long-range radar array that was installed over the last year is now inactive and is able to see the Israeli jets as they're coming off the runway in Palestine. So they don't even have to wait to see the jets before they reach close to the border. This is an impressive advancement in the air defense systems. And the last thing I would say about these air defense systems is that they're multi-layered in ways, again, that the US and the West is not used to. So not only do we have those, AA guns and something equivalent to the Patriot that shoots things that are on lower range, and then something on the middle range and something on the higher upper range, but also these explosive air defense warheads. And finally, we could say that these air defense systems chased the Israeli jets over Iraqi air space. And so they didn't even wait for the Israeli jets to get close to the Iranian-Iraqi border. They chased them over Iraq. And that made it impossible since they were the first wave failed in taking out the air systems, it made it impossible for the second or third wave to even get close to the border, let alone penetrate Iranian airspace to fire on Tehran, which is so far away from the border of Iraq.
Well, and I think that, I think what we're seeing, because, I don't know what happened with, I talked with Andrei Martyanov. I'm going to talk to him about it today. And basically he said that the Russians were utilizing their, everything from satellites, intelligence, long-range radar. They were working with Iran. Iran has all of theirs. And I think what we're seeing is, and this is not to denigrate anything that Iran does, it's something else. It's to show that what we have is a broad resistance to not just to Israel, but to Western hegemony. That, to me, the Russians, the Chinese, anybody who can in that particular bloc sees the danger of Western hegemony. And I think that all parties that can work to thwart that understood that Iran is an important cog in the Brics wheel, spoke in the Brics wheel. And that
you're 100%
go
right
ahead,
there.
go ahead.
So, sorry about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
And clearly, yes, Russia did provide some air defense systems that we don't know which ones they delivered. Most probably, those air defense systems were stationed around Tehran as a last resort if the defense systems of Iran didn't work. Clearly, Russia and China and the whole world now recognizes that it's the West and NATO as a whole that is fighting this war on behalf of the Zionist colony. The Zionist colony is already defeated. It doesn't have the capabilities to defend itself on the ground. It's defeated militarily by Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Gaza. It's defeated in terms of, Hezbollah just in the last 24 hours shot down at least 3 Israeli drones over Lebanese airspace. And this is in the midst of a war of a little country that is bombarded all the time. So you could imagine then that the Americans had no choice but to come in and conduct this attack against Iran on behalf of the Zionists, because they can't do it by themselves. And the more that the US is doing this, it's not only exposing the Zionists as a failed military power, they're starting to expose themselves. Because if the US, with all its might and the whole military of NATO, cannot defeat Hamas or Hezbollah, and now cannot even conduct military warfare against a state, not a militia or a rebel group, then how can they conduct war against China or Russia? You see, it's now exposing all the might of the West that has been hyped through Hollywood movies like Top Gun and others.
Yeah, what we're seeing is this, and that is in so many ways, it's just as part of the conversation, I think it's important. Neoliberalism has hollowed out the West. Industrially speaking, our industry is gone, so we can't produce the things, missiles or tanks or planes like we used to here, because our industry is hollowed out by corruption and greed of neoliberalism. Technologically speaking, because we don't place a priority on educating our students and putting out good students in science and all that kind of stuff. It's more, everything's about making money off the students. We don't have the technology. So now technologically, we've lost the empire has lost the technological race against the majority of mankind. You know what I mean? So we lost the technology race against the Irans and Russias and China, because you got to put Iran in there now with technological advancement in the world. We've lost that race against them. And we have forced them to come together to defend themselves. What's interesting, in the same way that you always bring this up, it isn't just Israel. This is the U.S. This NATO, all of that is the U.S. empire trying to, with plausible deniability, right, of putting out Israel or Ukraine and whoever. But in the same way that the U.S. is doing that, they forced the rest of the world to come together to defend themselves against this beast.
Oh yes, and anyone that didn't recognize in China and or in Russia 20, 30 years ago that these wars against the Arabic and Muslim peoples are going to lead to wars against China and Russia now is fully understanding of that. And I would say that, look, the axis of resistance right now is fighting a war on behalf of humanity as a whole, not only Brics or others. And it's not only our fight. If the Palestinian people are allowed to be genocided, then any and every other people in this world are a target for genocide, and nobody will come to their aid. So this is now a stance for all of humanity, and the outcomes of this war will set the next 100 years of history trajectory. It will set the future of people in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and it will definitely change the realities in Europe and North America. And if the Zionists are allowed to win this war, then God help the rest of humanity.
I think, here's what I think. I think they've already lost. I think that in the same way, get your comment, when you look at Ukraine, any objective person looks at it and sees town after town falling. They don't, the imperialists, they don't know what to do. It's clear that they've already lost the war in Ukraine. When I look at what's happening with Israel, all they can do now is run their mouth. They can't fight on the ground. They can't fight any military entity, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's Iran. If it's a state actor or a non-state actor, they can't defeat anyone. All they can do is attack women and children, right? Terrorism. It seems to me that both of these conflicts are lost irrevocably. It's over. The only question is, how do these things play out, as it were? But I think they've lost everything at this point.
Yeah, like yesterday there was a report, I think it was in the Washington Post or the New York Times, I don't know which rag it was, But it's said that the U.S. has coughed up the 75% of the bill of Israel's military activities over the last year. And the rest of the 25%, the rest is covered by Germany, the US, Canada, and what have you, all the other vessels. So when we're talking about 100% of the cost of Israel's military activities in a year is covered by the West, it means that they're bankrupt. It means that they don't have weapons, that their production is zero. They need direct involvement of delivery of weapons. They need also the financing. And this report was only talking about the military costs. So for sure, because the Israeli economy is totally destroyed, there's no industrial base left in the north of Palestine. There's no small companies, and all the corporations that were forced to open factories in the Zionist colony over the last couple of decades left. So what we have is even the regular economy of Israel right now is subsisting on donations, basically. You have all the Zionist lobbies in the West sending tens of millions of dollars every month, and all the dark money of the CIA and all the dark money of the Gulf monarchies and so on that is maintaining even the budget of the state of Israel. So at the minute any of those components of delivery mechanisms for funds and weapons stops, the economy of Israel collapses, the military of Israel collapses. It is right now already, as you said, defeated. And everything that we're seeing is just a show claiming that Israel is fighting a war. And on reality, it's the West fighting this war on their behalf.
I did want to ask you about this. A couple of things we want to hit, but the South Africa ICJ case, I understand that's heating up again. That I read that South Africa submitted like 750 pages. I saw this guy, Jeffrey Lafredo or something, that works with the Gray Zone. I saw an interview with him, and he was talking about how basically he had interviews of people, soldiers, who were admitting to war crimes. Admitting, oh yeah, we're stopping the food from going in. All of that kind of stuff is admissible, not just in the International Court of Justice, which imperialist own, but in the International Court of Justice worldview that the people of the world see, and that then they say, my God, I can see this, and they get to look at the International Court of Justice and say, well, how come I'm just a person in Denmark or Indiana and I can see that and say, my God, that's a war crime. And the ICJ struggles so much to try to get it, officially addressed. Anyway, your thoughts on what's happened in South Africa ICJ case?
Yeah, those 750 pages, they're still on the docket, but not released, so we can't read them. But what we know is from just the brief of it, is that this 750 pages includes direct evidence of the conducting of genocide by Israeli soldiers and officers and the administration, the government of Israel. So this is not anymore about, is there an intent of committing genocide? This is now evidence being put on the docket of the commissioning of war crimes and the conduction of war crimes. So if already the ICJ ruled that there's a plausible genocide and there is the intent of genocide, now we have the actual genocide being proven. And, I don't have much hope in the ICJ, just like you. I can see already the international system collapsing, right, because of the way that the US is refusing the application of international law in what's happening in Palestine. We saw last week one of the ICC, International Criminal Court judges, resigning, claiming he has a health issue. Obviously, he's been getting threats. And then the chief prosecutor of the ICC also having a campaign started against him about sexual harassment and clearly the Zionists are behind it. I don't know if they have some Epstein videos on him. He looks like an Epstein Island kind of guy, so most probably he does have some Epstein videos on him. So, there's no hope that either the ICC or the ICJ, bring justice to the Palestinians. But this is an important battle because we're trying to birth a new world. And this new world needs international laws that the majority of the planet agrees on, and bodies to implement those international agreements. And the United Nations and all its bodies built after World War II are failing. So either all of these activities will lead to the reformation of the international law body and the United Nations agencies in a ways that actually service humanity and peace, and or we will see a total collapse of that and a rising of a new body of international law and organizations to manage it. And Brics seems to be the nucleus of this new emerging world.
Let's talk about that a bit, because this is all one conversation. With Brics, one of the things we're seeing is a clash, and a Dr. Nikolai Petro, a guy that I think he's a brilliant guy. He talks about a clash of visions, right? The visions of kind of the liberal order, where everybody has to do what has to culturally do what the liberals say, and everything has to be the economic vision, the economic model of the liberals. One need only look at the results to know that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? I mean, they're going broke right now. They're up to their ears in debt, and they're saying everybody has to be like us, even though your economies are far. Even Yemen's economy is far healthier than the United States. And I'll tell you a quick story. There was a famous quote by Donald Trump, where at one point he was like, where he had gone broke, and he had, what was it? He had, filed bankruptcy and then started another corporation, which he probably hadn't lost a dime. You know the game. But on paper, right, he was $300 million in debt. I'm sure he wasn't a penny in debt, right? But at any rate, he was in a limo, and he's driving down the road, and he looks out the window, and he sees a homeless person laying on the street, and he says, "You know what?" They said, "What?" He said, "That guy right there is $300 million richer than I am, because I'm 300 million in debt." Okay, my point being this: Yemen is $38 trillion richer than the United States, because they ain't $33 trillion in debt. My point being a vision. Number one, that says everybody has to look like us, think like us, do what we want, have rainbow flags all over the place, Black Lives Matter, masks, whatever it is. Oh, by the way, and they got to give us their oil and their, and their lithium. We'll just keep that part quiet. A vision that says we'll respect different economic models. Some are communist countries, some are partially socialist, some are fully capitalist, whatever you want to be, we'll respect that. At the same time, different religions, whatever, and we'll have kind of an acceptance of difference in various civilizations, and we'll all work together, as opposed to the vision, everybody has to do what we want. Oh, and by the way, give us their natural resources. To me, that's what Brics, that's what this whole clash is, a clash of international visions as to how the world should run.
Yes. And Brics is, I think, winning the hearts and minds of the world because of that. Nobody's trying to impose their ways, not the Chinese, not the Russians. Nobody's trying to make everybody an Orthodox or Buddhist or and look, I've been watching the rise of Brics, and it has been moving very fast. Not only because of the amazing points that Brics is making and the solutions that Brics is providing, but also because of the failures of the West to address the rest of the world. They are addressing the rest of the world in ways, as you mentioned, saying you have to be like us or I'm going to bomb the hell out of you. You have to give me everything and nothing back to your, I will not give you anything back or I'm going to bomb the hell of you. That's not a selling point for anybody. So the in the last 10 years specifically, we saw this U.S. Retreat into its bubble and totally close dialogue with the rest of humanity, and this is actually compounding the escape and people wanting to run away from being associated with the West. I would say one thing about the BRICS is I have a fear, and I know not a lot of people talk about this, but this really fast expansion of the BRICS. It reminds me of the fast expansion of the EU.
Right.
Okay. And, originally the EU was started by Germany and France to bring together the Western European countries and build a new European army and a new European financial system that will be independent from the US. And then the US pushed in all the Eastern European countries that it controlled at the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the British, the clowns into the EU, only to slow it down and divert the power away from Germany and France. And we see now the results of it. Everybody wants to escape the EU, all the countries that are in it, and the populations of those Germany and France their economies are collapsing, and they've never been able to build an army to be independent, and now they're total vassals. So BRICS has a problem right now with accepting all these Trojan horses, like Turkey, like Saudi, like the Emirates, and even, I may say, something like Brazil currently. We saw how Brazil vetoed the entry of Venezuela. Okay, and those are dangerous indicators. You don't want to expand very fast to the point where those who are still collaborating with the US, that are not totally sovereign, can outnumber you in the vote. That is where the danger lies in this fast expansion of the BRICS. And I think the leadership in Russia and China must refocus on making sure that those who enter BRICS are ideologically also, in terms of their position of multipolarity, is compatible with BRICS. Otherwise, it will be another UN or EU scandal.
Well, I've talked to some people in Russia recently, and that it was, in fact, a broad discussion. And that's why, one of the things they talked about was that I forgot 40 or 50 countries or something wanted to enter, and everybody was saying, oh, this country or that country is going to enter in October, and they pumped the brakes for the reasons, two reasons. Number one, the reasons that you brought up, but the other is recognizing they don't have the infrastructure yet to do that. They don't want to move too fast, right? So I think they did pump the brakes a good bit. They came up with a new term, and that is like observer states or something like that, right? So, okay, we'll be friendly with you, we can do business with you, but we ain't bringing you into BRICS at this point. We don't have the infrastructure to do this, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And they didn't say it, but I have a feeling that issue, the other issue you brought up of the Trojan horse scenario was there. So it seems to me that they're fairly wise, and they did pump the brakes. Did they add anybody? I don't think they added anybody in October this year. As much as everybody was naming all the countries that they were going to add, I think that I believe they were going to bring in Venezuela maybe as an observer state or maybe whatever. But Venezuela is critical to BRICS, I think. That's the last country that the U.S. wants in. I mean, if you look at BRICS right now, 3 of the top 4 economies in the world are in BRICS. Look at the industrial power look at the commodities power, and of course they control the oil markets. So it's very powerful, but I do think they recognize that they got to pump the brakes, and also that what's critical to them is the economic infrastructure. I was having a discussion. They were saying, look, the issue right now is not bringing everybody in or not bringing everybody in. It's we've got to have the BRICS investment bank, because they're big issues, the IMF, the World Bank, things like that. They got to have the investment banks. They got to have the banking capability, even for what they have, much less for what they're, you know what I mean? If you don't have that, that's where they take you out. I used to do work on so-called terrorism when I was in law enforcement. And one of the discussions is if you have a terrorist network or like if you're dealing with international crime or mafia, how can you infiltrate them in their money chain? You go into the money chain, you find out where they're getting money, how they're moving it around, and that's what. So I think there are cool heads in Brics that understand in talking to some people, they understand the issue. So we'll see. As you said, you got to recognize the vulnerabilities, and there are very strong vulnerabilities. All right.
Yeah.
Get back to Iran, because this is important. Iran said we reserve the right to retaliate. We can retaliate, but Iran, I mean, they play, they invented chess. They play chess. They're so wise. I read that they were saying, well, if you were to get out of Gaza and Lebanon, then we won't retaliate. Everything they do, or every position they take, they find some very powerful angles. Your thoughts on Iran? They said they're going to retaliate. They didn't say how they're going to retaliate. And then they come in and say, look, maybe we'll walk away if you get out. I mean, they're playing some pretty good, pretty brilliant games here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the Security Council meeting yesterday, and listening to how the American representative, I mean, she's such a coconut, by the way. But she was kind of shaking while she was saying the words. She clearly was worried because she was using very aggressive language towards Russia, China, and Iran. And given the failures militarily of the attack on Iran, you don't bark after that. After getting, so she was barking, but you could see in her face and in the body language and the intonation of her language that she is not that confident of what she was saying. So the American representative said that this should be considered the end of the military activities of Israel, which opens the door for security, intelligence, terrorism that Israel could be conducting at any moment inside Iran. And I think the Iranians understand that. So it is still an open battle, even according to the UN representative of the United States. And, hearing the responses of Iran, both at the Security Council and since yesterday, it's clear that Iran are getting ready to retaliate because they announced that 4 of their officers manning air defenses were martyred in this attack, and that they have to avenge them. Okay, and so how and what would be this response be? This is a big question right now. Obviously, the U.S. and Israel and their vessels in the region are now claiming that they're ready for temporary ceasefire in Gaza for a few days, and with the exchange of 8 Israeli POWs, and then a return to the slaughter. This is according to the president of Egypt, Sisi. His face also, when he was announcing this, he had a huge smirk on his face, so you could see that he was lying. It couldn't even hide his lie. He wasn't acting well. And then we have Hochstein, the Israeli, special envoy of Biden, who is now in the Zionist colonies, coming back to Lebanon. He's saying that they are ready for a ceasefire if they can implement 1701, the UN resolution, plus with changes that include a withdrawal of the UN troops from South Lebanon and the deployment of German, British, French, and American troops in South Lebanon. So he's talking about an occupation of South Lebanon by the West directly. I mean, these are all illusions in the head of the empire. But you see, all of this, no matter what we think, is it implementable or not, is all a strategy of wasting time. The U.S. wants to at least calm the intensity of this battle while the elections in the U.S. happen in, what is it, 6 days from now or 7 days? I lost track of the days right now, but it's they don't want to be in a full-out war, and or that the top news item be a war in the region here while elections are happening, because they're scared of the effect on the ballot. They want to keep that as a question. As we saw, both candidates said that they are, will do anything for Israel. So they were attempting to move this question off the ballot, and any direct confrontation that blows up in the region right now will then take the headline from the elections and the candidates' programs. So I think the Iranians know that. I think the Axis of Resistance know that. So actually, in my opinion, we should be expecting Iran's response and any major Hezbollah attacks to happen the night of the election or the night before it. So this will bring it back to be the top issue on the ballot box. And they don't care, the Axis of Resistance, what's the result of it. But the point is that we need to make sure that the American public has this region and the situation in the region at their the top of their mind when they're voting.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be one of the big things, but I also think that the resistance forces have massive advantages. Iran can fire their own missiles. Hezbollah, they have they can hit any targets with any of their allies. So there's a huge alliance. And there's the one thing that the U.S. doesn't have anymore, and I keep arguing this: plausible deniability. In Ukraine, no, it's not us. We're standing up for Ukraine. Everybody knows it's them. Oh, no, it's not Israel. We're just trying to help an ally. Everybody knows it's Israel. There's no plausible deniability for the U.S. empire. But Iran has it. They got alliances all over. Yeah, well, we tried to tell them not to, but, hey, you can't stop those, the Ansar Allah. Those guys just do whatever they want. Wasn't us, right? I also wanted to ask you about this. Let me throw this in. I think we always have to have, at some point every week, we got to say something about Ansar Allah. They've been hitting ships again. The U.S. flew over and did what was performative. They're like, we flew with B-2 bombers and we blew up something or other. We fixed them. And Ansar Allah's like, they pretty much yawn. Yeah, we're going to blow up some more ships, whatever. It seems that everything the West does against Ansar Allah is futile and just makes them look stronger and more determined, and, to be quite frank, more heroic.
Oh, yes. I mean, here is the poorest nation on the planet going head to head with all the might of the West for a year, and still bringing the West to its knees, and cutting all the supply routes coming through the Suez Canal, and so I think the B-2 bombers attacking Yemen was supposed to be a message to Iran, right? So I wonder if in the second or third wave of that attack that was coming on Iran, it included B-2 bombers, most probably. And because the air defenses of Iran had uncovered all the coming waves, and their air defenses withstood the first wave of attack, the B-2 bombers probably had to be rushed back to their airfields. Otherwise, they would have been taken down. And so I think even these threats that the U.S., exhibitionist threats that the U.S. does against smaller parts of the Axis of Resistance, like this Ansar Allah attack with the B-2s, are actually weakening the deterrence of the U.S. Every time the U.S. does this, and then they're not able to deliver on something big as like an attack on Iran, it's just making them look even weaker and weaker. And that is now, encouraging more parts of the world to rebel against the empire. And I think Yemen is probably the worst case scenario for the West. They would have loved that their fight was still only with Hezbollah or Hamas, but Ansar Allah has really stripped them naked in front of the whole world, showed that their power as the United States, because the fight of Ansar Allah is directly with NATO and the US. It's not even with the Israel. It's directly with the military might of the West, and the West has failed. So they had to expose themselves. It probably would have been better for the US to just not even fight this fight with Yemen. Let the Yemenis blockade this and not expose the weaknesses of their Navy. I mean, Ansar Allah hit an American aircraft carrier as well as multiple destroyers. That definitely destroyed America's naval prowess and threat to the rest of the planet, just because of that confrontation with Ansar Allah. So the US's need to show itself as the bully by picking on supposedly the smallest kid in the yard is now exposed them to bigger fighters that could beat them up, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that's exposed is this, and I think this is critical. Early in the conflict, with the discussion of Ansar Allah, and basically the discussion was, well, their stuff's going to be dug in underground. Bomb is not going to do any good, right? There's only one way that you could stop them, and that would be troops on the ground. And Ansar Allah said, please do that. That's the fight that we want. We've been praying forever that we would get a chance to meet you on the battlefield. Good. Drop them in there. Let's do it. And the U.S. empire can't fight on it is Israel. They can't fight on the ground in Lebanon. They can't go toe to toe with the warriors there. In Ukraine, they can't put guys on and go toe to toe with the Russians because they know how that's going to end. History tells us how that's going to end. And Ansar Allah is sitting there saying, put them on the ground and come on in. So what we're seeing is the only thing the U.S. empire can do is fly over and drop bombs. They don't have the wherewithal, either militarily with the people to do it, or back home, because the people will not accept bodies coming home when it's because people will start saying, why are our soldiers dying? What are we defending again? And the truth will come out. So what Ansar Allah has also demonstrated is the West cannot fight on the ground. And I don't mean just doesn't have the ability. They don't have the support back home because everything they're telling their citizens are lies. And that would be exposed in a ground fight.
Yes. And because the Israelis and the Americans have been threatening to invade Hodeidah port on the Red Sea, it's the last major port that is under control of the Sana'a government. In the last 4 or 5 days, Yemen and the armed forces announced a full military exercise of their ground forces and their navy in preparation for a possible invasion of Yemen and of possible deployment of Yemeni troops on the fronts in Palestine. So they announced now that, number one, they're getting ready for the possibility of the West invading them, and it's not going to be successful. There's no way the US can do more than what the Saudis and all that Saudi coalition, which is really an American coalition, was trying to do for 10 years, and they couldn't go up the mountains of Yemen and almost lost some parts of Saudi territory. If Yemen had the in their mind to go into Saudi Arabia, they can do it. But so clearly a military invasion of Yemen is impossible. The Romans tried it. You can occupy the desert parts of Yemen. Maybe you can occupy a few coastal zones. But going up those mountains, the highest mountains in Arabia and East Africa, it's an impossible job. The Romans tried it, the Persians tried it, the Babylonians tried it, the British tried it, even the Ottomans tried it. So there's no one has ever been able to occupy Sana'a in history. Okay, so the American, supremacist mind of these leaders and the Zionist supremacist mind makes them think that they can bend the will of geography and history, not only bend the hand of God, as the Zionists claim to be doing. And that is a recipe for failure, to think that you can skip on history and geography and achieve things that have not been achieved before.
Naim Qassam is the new chief of Lebanon's Hezbollah. Your thoughts? I mean, we've got some groups that are naming leaders and saying we're just not going to say who it is because the Israelis are trying to assassinate him. Hezbollah said we've got a new leader. Your thoughts on that and on the Israelis? Always trying to assassinate leaders, and somebody apparently threw a drone at Netanyahu's house and tried to blow him up. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, so Naim al-Qassem, he's one of the founding group that was with Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in the 1980s, and he had served in almost every possible position of leadership within Hezbollah, including their political council, their military council, their diplomatic council. So he has a full view on the operations of Hezbollah, and he spent a lot of times in their military wing. So he is the military hardcore kind of position within the leadership of Hezbollah. So as we saw, since his first video a few weeks ago, he had already now released 2 videos speaking to the Lebanese people. The first video that he released was shot, I think, purposefully in, you could see the lighting setting, you could see the seating position, the language that he was speaking. It was all shot in ways to dramatize and set the mood of the viewer that what's coming now is going to be a hell for the enemy. So it felt like a horror movie, the way they shot his first speech. And that's something unusual for Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is very advanced in propaganda aesthetics. Okay, so they didn't do it because, let's say, they didn't have good lighting or whatever it is. No, they did it on purpose. So that should tell us where we're going. The other thing is that it's been a month since the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, and for them to announce, Sayyid al-Qassem as the new Secretary General, it means that they have him in a very safe place. They probably were preparing themselves for that possibility of assassination by the Zionists, and therefore they didn't announce for a month his ascension to the position. And now they did it. It means he's in a very safe place, and it's going to be practically impossible for the Israelis to assassinate, but you never know. And I think we should, now that we had that example of what happened in Gaza with Ismail Haniyeh being assassinated in Tehran, and then within a week, Yahya Sinwar being appointed as the Secretary General of Hamas and then being assassinated, we should be expecting right now that Hamas will not announce who replaced Yahya Sinwar, at least for another month, for things to be, kind of safer for them to do that. Hezbollah had announced Qassem as the new Secretary General, but they have not announced any names of who is his deputy, who's the guiding council members, and so forth. And that's, again, part of the security strategy that Hezbollah is taking.
I think there's one other thing that I wanted to say. Oh, I did want to ask you this. I had a friend of mine the other day, basically, he doesn't know what's going on. And he says, well, it seems to me like Israel's doing whatever they want and they're not getting hit. And my understanding is, I read that Hezbollah is just hitting targets, attriting targets, that they've been, in fact, hitting some of the like munitions factories. They've been hitting critical military infrastructure for Israel, that on a daily basis, troop concentrations, that there's a lot more going on, that basically the West doesn't show this. They don't want people to know the capabilities, technological intelligence capabilities that Hezbollah has, and subsequently the amount of damage that Israel is taking in, you know, what is kind of an all-out war at this point between Hezbollah and Israel. Anyway, if you could clear that up.
Oh, yes. Look, at the Israelis now, it's more than a month that they have been attempting to invade South Lebanon. They carpet bombed all the frontline villages. There's nothing left of those villages, but they still can't enter those villages and hold them. Every time they attempt to enter those villages, they get clobbered by Hezbollah fighters. Yesterday, the Israeli media admitted that 3 Hezbollah fighters took on a whole platoon of Israeli invaders and either killed or injured them all. 3 fighters versus a whole platoon. Okay. And now we know that Israel has already lost a brigade since the beginning of the month. A whole brigade either killed or injured, and all its armaments destroyed. Those are huge numbers. Okay, this is not a joke. And Hezbollah, for the first time 2 days ago, this is the first time in the history of the struggle since 1948, Hezbollah released a video in Hebrew and showed a list of 25 colonies in the north of Palestine, and ordered all the colonists to evacuate immediately because Israeli soldiers are hiding in those colonies, and Hezbollah will be leveling all of those colonies to the ground. And they have commenced that now, and we can see right now Kiryat Shmona, for instance, in the Hula Valley is totally wiped off the map. And on the list of those 25 colonies, it includes Naharia, which is a major city, basically, on the coast, Mediterranean coast, the most northern kind of tourist beach area. And this comes as a response to the Israelis bombarding Tyre, or Sur, the historic capital of the Phoenician people on the Mediterranean. The Israelis are destroying all the archaeological sites. This is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in human history. It is the oldest city in Lebanon, and the Israelis are targeting specifically the archaeological sites in the city on purpose, as they did today in the Bekaa Valley. They also attacked the oldest French barracks that refugees were hiding on. They're bombing the Greek, Roman archaeological sites in the Bekaa Valley. And since yesterday, they killed at least 70 civilians around the Baalbek area in the Bekaa Valley, because they're targeting civilian homes and where people are being sheltered, that are internally displaced. So this is above and beyond, of course, Hezbollah having these drones infiltrate Israel. We spoke with last time about the attack on Netanyahu's home. Yesterday, there was a drone flying over Haifa and another flying over Safad, both of them just flying for 6 hours in circles over the cities. And the Israelis unable to intercept them, take them down, neither through electronic warfare or traditional military, and or air jets and helicopters. So we are seeing a total collapse of even this idea that Israelis are technologically superior to the rest of humanity.
Last thing I'll do, and this is actually Haaretz. This is an Israeli paper. Okay, we'll look at that. Look at some of these articles. 4 Israeli soldiers killed in combat, 1 killed in rocket barrage from Lebanon. Here's another article. Intelligence operation collected information on sensitive Israeli bases, soldiers. Here's another one. Netanyahu can smell total victory over Israel, right? What we're seeing now, I'm looking at the Israeli papers. That doesn't sound like a country that's confident in victory. That doesn't sound like a country that's confident that their military domination exists. And I'm not saying that to put down Haaretz. I'm saying to say, I'm glad to see that there's an Israeli paper telling the truth to the people of Israel, that their leadership is not acting in their best interest. But just looking at the Israeli paper alone doesn't sound like there's, loaded with confidence.
Yesterday, Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, who's a fascist, blabbing hate all the time and pumping his chest about, the prowess of his military. He was at the convention of his fascist party, and he broke out in tears on the stage when discussing the number of Israeli soldiers dead. And he said that he can every day he's spending his whole day running from one funeral to another. This is on the stage, out of the mouth of Smotrich, and he starts crying on the stage, saying that the vast majority of those soldiers killed are members of his fascist coalition. So the parties of Ben Gvir and Smotrich, as we saw, Ben Gvir created this parallel security system and armed all these fascist settlers in the West Bank and so forth. And then they took part of that, brown shirt corps that they created and pushed it into the military. And then put them on the front line. These are the same soldiers that we saw. There was another video that came out the day before yesterday of soldiers at a funeral, and they're crying also, and they're talking about their friends. These are all colonists from the West Bank, the most fascist that you can find, and they're all crying and talking about their friends, how they went into Gaza to exact revenge, and openly they said these words, that we were raping women and killing children and so on, and then we died. Okay, so here is this is the hardcore that is actually right now pushing the Israeli military into these actions. And if their morale is so low, and if they are losing so much, then the old guard within the Israeli military, that was kind of like the secular Zionist that founded the colony of Israel, and were losing power as Netanyahu was starting to ostracize them and try to bring these religious Zionists in. If this religious Zionist core is being liquidated, we will see a return of those liberal secular Zionists, as they call themselves, into power positions in the military, and that is the beginning of either a civil war, even within the military, and or the collapse of Netanyahu's coalition, and in the end, the collapse of Israel.
Last thing, I don't know if you're familiar with this, I didn't bring it up. I read that some guy was driving a truck outside of Tel Aviv, and there was a bus stop. There was a lot of Israeli soldiers there, or recruits or whatever, and he just ran right into the crowd, killed a bunch of people, wounded a bunch of people. And that, so, the appearance to me is they're not even safe. This is not benefiting Israel in any way, shape, or form. I would even argue this. Israel's kind of Ukraine 2.0. The U.S. empire is using the Israelis. Granted, they've created a fascist dynamic inside of Israel, just like they did Ukraine. Interesting. But that they're just sacrificing Israeli lives at the altar of U.S. imperialism. That they're going to keep this up. There ain't going to be a whole lot of Israelis or Ukrainians left. The young men, the generations of them, are getting wiped out on behalf of U.S. imperialism. And this guy's driving trucks. I mean, they weren't on the front line. They're not safe in their own towns and cities now.
I'm glad that you brought up these two things, and they are very, very important. First off, that truck driver is a Palestinian citizen of the state of Israel. So he's from what we call 1948 territories. So it, and he done this by himself. There's nobody that prompted him, nobody that told him to do anything. So it is impossible for the security apparatus of Israel to predict and or stop something like this. And the more Palestinian people take it upon themselves to take actions against the state of Israel, the faster I think the collapse will come. The other thing that we should note is that this man, took his truck to the bus stop outside the Glilot military base. The Glilot military base in Tel Aviv is where the military intelligence corps is, including Unit 8200 that is responsible for all the electronic warfare, all that bots that we see supporting Israel online, and the assassinations that happened of the pager terrorism attack that the Israelis conducted. And there's this bus stop that has a Mossad bus, or intelligence bus, that takes these workers from the Glilot base, these soldiers and intelligence officers, to their homes without them having to go through public transport and or use their private cars. This way they're not kind of followed, or people can know who they are. These are supposed to be secret individuals that we don't know their pictures, we don't know their names. So for him to go drive through this bus stop and take out almost 50 of them are either dead or injured. The Israelis didn't update their numbers. Originally, the numbers were 9 dead and 40 somewhat injured, and we have not heard an update since. But the videos and the pictures of the piles of them under the truck tells you that they didn't survive. Not many survived. Finally, when you mentioned this idea that the West is using Israel as cannon fodder on behalf of it, this idea goes back to Napoleon. I don't think many of our viewers know this, but when Napoleon invaded Egypt and Palestine, he was the original Zionist. He had in his mind, he wanted to create a buffer zone. This is what he called it, a buffer zone. He wanted to move all the Christian Egyptians from the heartland of Egypt to the coast, and all the Christians in greater Syria to the coast of Syria, and to bring all the Jews of Europe and dump them in Palestine. And then he would have a buffer zone, as he called it, of Semites, again, this is what he called them, that will be in perpetual war with the rest of their brothers and sisters in this area, that diverts the power and attention of the people in the region, and all those Jewish Europeans will be dying on behalf of the empire. At that time, it was the French Empire, and the French wouldn't lose any soldiers on the ground. So this idea is still today the effect. The Zionist Jewish elite in the West sold their own people as cannon fodder to European colonialism. And they have been sacrificing their own people for 100 years now to maintain Western imperial power. The day will come that the Jewish Europeans, Jewish Americans, what have you, will wake up to what their elite did to them by selling their children on this death march in our region.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I certainly agree with you. And I'll say this on that terrorism. There was a time in my life when, for a year, when I was in law enforcement, I worked with the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. And my job in the state of Maryland was to identify potential locations for terrorist attack and to figure out how to harden them against terrorist attack. And I was also trained by the DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which was under the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. And it was like, how do you harden areas so that they can't be attacked by terrorists? One of the first things they said to me was, look, we understand that if some guy just decides that he wants to do a terrorism attack, There's no way we can stop it. One of the first things they said was, if some guy's driving down the road and he sees those, because I suspect he's driving by every day in his truck and he sees them come out of there and he sees them at that bus stop day after day. And he says, I got a plan. And they make, and you know, if you think about it, they see his truck go by every day. It becomes normal. Every day they see him and then he says, okay, I got a plan. And whatever day he speeds up right into the crowd, and he would have time if he's doing it day after day to figure out what's the best time, when the most people are going to be there, what's the best angle to take. If one person says, I'm motivated to attack, one of the first things that the FBI taught us was, now there's nothing you can do to stop that. But what we will do is try to thwart the things that we can. So when resistance is in the heart of the people individually, and they don't have to be mobilized or motivated, there is no defense for that. And that's what the FBI said. Got 1 minute, you get the last word.
Oh yeah, I mean, that same video of the truck plowing through these Zionists, you could see at least 100 soldiers around, and they're all running away. They have guns. They're coming out of their base. They're running away like chickens. They only can kill
what it was?
Children.
I'll tell you what it was. They thought the truck had a bomb in it.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it. They probably figured, oh, my gosh, he's going to run into the crowd. Then it's going to be a truck bomb, and they're going to blow us all to smithereens. And they were trying to get away from what they thought was the blast.
Yes, and maybe it should have had the bomb that would have helped us some more. But listen, point is, it also shows cowardice, total cowardice. That you will not see that cowardice from Palestinian or Lebanese fighters. We see people rushing to attacks and explosions, trying to help people while they're under threat of being also bombed or killed. How many videos we watched of Palestinians trying to save somebody that was shot and then getting shot as they are trying to pull a body. But that never stops the Palestinian from doing that.
Or guys who have like nothing but a big satchel charge running up to a tank and throwing the bomb under the tank. They don't even have a gun in their hands. They got on a pair of sneakers and they come out of a tunnel and they literally run up to a tank where they could be under fire and throw the bomb under the tank with their hands. And off they go back in and blow the tank up. And I mean, at that point, you figure the odds of you surviving aren't really good, but this is the operation I'm going to do. If I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't.
Oh, yes. And, this courage, this conviction of the justness of our struggle is why we will win. It took 100 years. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Liberation of Palestine is very nigh. It just depends. What we are going to be arguing about for the next year is how many people are going to, unfortunately, be martyred or die as this liberation happens. But it's going to happen. And the only thing that we don't know is how crazy the American elite will be and how far they'll fight to maintain this colony.
Well, we don't know what they'll do within the next week, with the election. Who only knows? At any rate, Laith Marouf, everybody, freepalestine.video is his website. Everybody go to freepalestine.video. Make sure when you go there that you follow freepalestine.video on all their social media locations, because any of them could be taken out or shadow banned or banned on any given day. Make sure you donate if you're able to, whether you can or not. Make sure you share freepalestine.video on all of your social media accounts and put a note there where you recommend that people do the same, that you recommend that others share it, and you recommend that those who can afford it donate. Share this on all your social media accounts so people will get the message. Thanks a lot. Laith Marouf, certainly appreciate it. Everybody, will have Laith Marouf back next week and prior to next week if something big happens and we need to talk to him. Have a great day. We're out.